Jay Shaner's piano. Jay, you've been playing piano since age 7.
Yes.
Could you show a beginner, say someone who's never played piano before, just a quick lesson on something to get started with?
Well, I think you have to start with the middle C. That's where I started. And if you play just all the white keys, and you play it, up to the next C, you can play a major scale. But we've all heard that, and it sounds a little boring, and kids, or adults even, that start learning piano probably think, well, that's not that exciting. But if you just take that third note and you drop it down 1/2, well, on the guitar it's a half, it's a 1 fret, but here, just play the black key, which is the E flat, and you kind of add that in, and you can add it in any time, even if you're just going up the scale. And you just, wherever you want to add that in. It sounds bluesy and it sounds cool, and
right.
If you went to a party and you wanted to impress somebody, you could just you could even just kind of sit on the piano and somebody would go, oh, they kind of know what they're doing, maybe. That's my quick answer.
What I found from playing guitar for many years, that I really didn't get decent on guitar until I started to relax my hands. And no one had ever told me that before. Do you think that applies to piano as well?
Oh, sure. I think, well, I took piano when I was, like I said, I started at age 7. I'm not a really great piano player, but one of the things that the teacher did really well with me, and that it's always stuck with me, is just learning how to play scales right. And you kind of learn how to form your hands right. The thumb under the third finger, or and how to play scales and put your hands in the right position. And the same way with guitar is like if you learn how to play, you play
chromatic.
in a position, and it makes it playing much easier. It also, helps you put your hand in the right position on guitar so you don't get cramps or carpal tunnel or or whatever.
So like sports, it comes down to positioning.
Yeah, form. I think form's really important, and it's more important when you first start out. However, probably the greatest guitar players that we know of, people like Jimi Hendrix, probably didn't even think twice about their form.
I saw Hendrix in an interview say that he didn't know how to read music, and he didn't consider himself a great guitarist, but the rest of us do.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was such an innovator.
Sure, and I think that his creative ability is probably what we admire most. I mean, most people can learn how to read music, but not everybody can, like you said, be an innovator or be super creative or change the game or change the way people play music or perceive music. Somebody like Hendrix kind of changed the way people perceive music. And
he broke rules.
How do you do that? You don't do that by learning how to read music.
Right.
It's just kind of like, you have it.
It seems like the piano is all about learning to read music more than the guitar, to me. Do you ever feel that?
I think that piano is a little easier to visualize sometimes than music.
Because it's linear.
I've given some guitar lessons, and you'll take the student over to the piano and say, this is what I mean when you say, the distance between frets, that's one fret, that's the next fret, whatever.
So intervals.
Visualizing on a piano, to me, seems easier. And I don't know if that's because that's the first instrument I learned on, or if it actually is easier. But I actually do think it also is, when you go to read music, it seems to, you get your treble clef and your left your treble clef and your bass clef, and your left hand and your right hand, and you're sitting right in the middle where middle C is, and there's a difference between these keys because they're higher up than these keys, and it just seems to make a little bit more sense aesthetically and physically.
What's interesting is before the recording industry, which, you know, we're going back to the 1880s, a lot of people had pianos in their homes, and that was the music that people would listen to. So they had to learn to read music. That's changed, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we also, I think one of the, talking about people who kind of changed the game, changed music and the way we perceive music, Bob Dylan changed songwriting. Bob Dylan came along, and now everybody felt like, well, what I have to say is important, you know? Everybody, I think people used to, musicians were hired to play, say, before recorded music. If you had a restaurant and you wanted some music in the background, you had somebody sit there and play guitar or play piano or something. And you played covers, you played standards and stuff, but the idea that we all have this songwriter in ourselves and we have like this voice that needs to get out, I think that has changed, and that changed sort of with the folk movement and Bob Dylan and, you know, the music of
and
50s and 60s.
I applaud him for that.
Oh, yeah. Because I wouldn't be doing, you know, I wouldn't be a songwriter if it wasn't for the guys like Bob Dylan. And
it's funny because he influenced a lot of artists who don't even realize his influence. Based on everything you just said, that he kind of made it acceptable for anyone to tell their story in music.
Right, and it wasn't just Bob Dylan, but I think that he had an influence on
the Beatles.
Yeah, he had an influence on the Beatles and his sort of brand of folk music and the timing of the 60s. And it wasn't just a blues. He wasn't a bluesman. You know, and the American population of young white college kids that he was starting to sing to, they could relate to that style of songwriting. Whereas maybe they couldn't relate so much to, like, some, you know, Robert Johnson, who probably wasn't even known at that time, but he kind of took this ability to, like, take folk music and bring it to the masses of kids